Ça va faire crash. Hop.
I urge all member states to actively facilitate inclusivity in multilateral fora, including the review process of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Excellencies, as Council members, you receive briefings on many issues, difficult, gruesome, heartbreaking. You hear about wars and human rights violations, terrorist acts, injuries, millions displaced, and many more put at risk of starvation due to the medium and long-term effect on climate, agricultural production, and food markets around the world. This scenario seems unthinkable, and yet today, the risk of nuclear weapon use is higher than it has been in decades. As the norm against the use, the nuclear taboo, is undermined by reckless rhetoric and threats, especially those issued in the context of an active military conflict. The NPT, the foundational instrument of the non-proliferation and disarmament regime, is under tremendous pressure. Nuclear and non-nuclear weapon states are divided over the lack of implementation of nuclear disarmament commitments, while modernization, and in some cases numerical growth of arsenals, sends a message of long-term reliance on nuclear weapons. The majority of UN member states have rejected nuclear weapons by joining the NPT and nuclear weapon-free zones, and more recently by concluding the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. But we are now witnessing a recommitment to nuclear weapons, an increase in the value attached to them that challenges the norm against their pursuit and acquisition and contributes to proliferation pressures. Furthermore, the divisions among the nuclear weapon states are such that the actors whose cooperation is key to achieving outcomes and advancing the goals of the NPT are effectively not talking to each other. Throughout the Cold War, the opposing superpowers were able to agree on the importance of non-proliferation and engagement on arms control, and work together to secure the NPT. That is not the case today, and this is a fundamental challenge to the ability of states parties to agree on a meaningful consensus outcome at the next review conference in 2026. The nuclear weapon states often cite difficult international security environment as reason not to proceed with nuclear disarmament. The conditions are not right. Fair enough, the situation is indeed dire. However, the 5 countries defined as nuclear weapon states under the NPT are also the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, to whom the UN Charter entrusts the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. It is this responsibility I want to emphasize and appeal to today, for it is in your hands, more than anyone else's, to make sure that the nuclear taboo holds and that this Council and its future iterations never have to receive the kind of briefing I described earlier. Nuclear risk has been on the mind of countless experts, policymakers, and diplomats in recent years. There has been no shortage of proposals on steps and measures to implement. However, nuclear risk reduction discussions at the NPT review process meetings get bogged down in framing debates. Is it a substitute for nuclear disarmament or its enabler? Are we talking about strategic risks or any risks emanating from nuclear weapons? Important though these questions are, the 2026 review conference cannot spend days going over the same arguments. It would not be productive, and we can only hope it will not be too late. The UN Security Council, specifically its 5 permanent members, should step up now. Recall how encouraging the Council action was in 1995, in the run-up to the indefinite extension of the NPT. Then, the Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 984 on assurances against the use of nuclear weapons. Ahead of the 11th review conference, the nuclear weapon states should issue pledges, individually or collectively, on reducing the nuclear risks and formalize them through a UN Security Council resolution, similarly to the Resolution 984. Most importantly, the new resolution should clearly state that nuclear weapons must never be used again under any circumstances. I further urge the nuclear weapon states to include the following commitments: no increase in nuclear arsenals, no new weapon designs, no new deployments of weapons at home or abroad, on Earth or in outer space, no nuclear testing, and no threats to use nuclear weapons. I realize this would be a tall order even in better times, not to mention today's circumstances. But precisely because of how high the stakes are, I call on you to approach it not from the place of balancing and bargaining, but from recognition of your responsibility as nuclear weapon states and permanent members of the UN Security Council. Excellencies, accepting an Oscar for his portrayal of Robert Oppenheimer, Cillian Murphy said that we're all living in Oppenheimer's world now, and dedicated his award to the peacemakers everywhere. So if I may, to the UN Security Council members, and particularly the P5, I would like to say, in the world of heightened nuclear threat, be the peacemakers. I thank you.
I thank Ms. Muhamadzanova for her briefing. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Japan. Excellencies, dear colleagues, I thank you all for joining me today. I also thank Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Dr. Robert Floyd, Ms. Gorka Muhamadzanova for their insights. Distinguished colleagues, the catastrophes of Hiroshima and Nagasaki must never be repeated. Based on this firm belief, Japan, as the only country to have ever suffered atomic bombings during war, has been a global leader in the quest to realize a world without nuclear weapons. As part of this endeavor, since 1994, Japan has submitted annual UN General Assembly resolutions on nuclear disarmament, which have been widely supported by the UN membership. At the last NPT review conference, Prime Minister Kishida proposed the Hiroshima Action Plan. Moreover, Japan hosted the G7 summit in Hiroshima last year. On this occasion, not only the G7 leaders, but also the Ukrainian president and representatives of ASEAN, the AU, the PIF, and the G20 deepened their understanding of the realities of the atomic bombing. Their visit to Hiroshima sent a strong message in support of a world without nuclear weapons. Distinguished colleagues, the international security environment is becoming more severe. The international community has become even more divided over how to advance nuclear disarmament. Nevertheless, we must steadily advance realistic and practical efforts toward a world without nuclear weapons. The NPT is a cornerstone of the international nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation regime. Next year, the international group of eminent persons established under Prime Minister Kishida's initiative will issue recommendations for the NPT Review Conference in 2026. This is why it is extremely relevant and meaningful to hold this briefing today at the Security Council in the midterm year of the NPT review cycle with the participation of both nuclear weapon states and non-nuclear weapon states. Distinguished colleagues, I would like to stress the following four perspectives. First, the high importance of the 5 actions set forth in the Hiroshima action plans. These are: 1 is a shared recognition on the importance of continuing the record of non-use of nuclear weapons. 2, enhancing transparency. 3, maintaining the decreasing trend of the global nuclear stockpile. 4, securing nuclear non-proliferation and promoting the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. And 5, encouraging visits to Hiroshima and Nagasaki by international leaders and others. We must implement these actions with an ever greater sense of urgency. Second, Japan will further strengthen and lead to efforts to embody the 5 actions of the Hiroshima Action Plan. As a new step towards that end, I am delighted to announce the establishment of the FMCT Friends. This is a cross-regional group of friends which aims to maintain and enhance political attention towards a fissile material cut-off treaty. The importance of the FMCT in limiting the quantitative improvement of nuclear weapons by banning the production of fissile materials is indisputable. Japan will further increase international and political attention toward an FMCT. Empowering young people is the key for our future. We will create a global network among the youth towards the elimination of nuclear weapons. In this context, Japan welcomes the start of the UN Youth Leader Fund for a World Without Nuclear Weapons, in which future leaders visiting Hiroshima and Nagasaki will learn firsthand of the realities of atomic bombing. In addition, we need to overcome the dichotomy between deterrence and/or disarmament. Through the Japan Chair for a World Without Nuclear Weapons, Japan aims to deepen international discussion in this area. Japan promotes further cooperation with international organizations. The IAEA plays an extremely important role in promoting the international nuclear non-proliferation and peaceful uses of nuclear energy. Last week, the Director General of the IAEA, Mr. Grossi, visited Japan. Japan reaffirmed its commitment to cooperate with the agency to promote peaceful use of nuclear energy, which contributes to the SDGs. Japan fully supports the first nuclear energy summit by the IAEA taking place this week. Third, the international community must be united with one voice against any movement that runs in counter to a world without nuclear weapons. A rapid buildup of nuclear capabilities by certain countries could spark a nuclear arms race. Russia's nuclear threats, let alone any use of nuclear weapons in the context of the situation in Ukraine, are absolutely unacceptable. Japan urges Russia to return to full implementation of the New START Treaty. In addition, Japan expresses strong hope for dialogues leading to the development of a broader framework of arms control that covers a wider range of weapon systems with appropriate governance. North Korea has advanced its nuclear and missile activities. It launched ballistic missile yesterday in violation of multiple Security Council resolutions. Such activities by North Korea threaten the peace and stability of the region and the international community. It is totally unacceptable. Moreover, there is a possibility of further provocations, including a nuclear test. In this context, the role of the 1718 Committee and its panel of experts is critically important, and its function needs to be maintained. With no clear outlook in resolving Iran's nuclear issue, restraint by countries concerned, including Iran, is necessary, particularly in light of the current heightened tension in the Middle East. Furthermore, Japan promotes the implementation of UNSC Resolution 1540 with the aim of preventing the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction to non-state actors. During the Cold War, despite the confrontational environment at that time, the international community established legal frameworks to ensure the peaceful and sustainable use of outer space, which prohibit placing nuclear weapons or any other kinds of weapons of mass destruction in outer space. Even now, Japan firmly believes that outer space must remain a domain free of nuclear weapons, and that it is our common responsibility to fully comply with the existing legal frameworks, including the Outer Space Treaty. Fourth, Japan is closely following the possible impact of emerging technologies such as AI on nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. In this context, Japan welcomes the commitment to maintain human control and involvement made by the US, UK, and France during the last NPT review conference. Japan strongly calls for other nuclear weapon states to follow this commitment. I stress also the importance of the WPS perspective. We will continue to emphasize the importance of gender perspectives being taken into account in the decision-making process, as Japan has called for in its annual GA resolutions on nuclear disarmament. Distinguished colleagues, I look forward to a vibrant discussion to share ideas and proposals to accelerate concrete actions towards the next NPT review conference. I thank you. I resume my function as President of Council. I give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Veronica Nathaniel Macomo de Diogo, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Cooperation of Mozambique.
Thank you, Madam President, for giving me the floor. I will speak in Portuguese. Senhora Presidente, Senhor Secretário-Geral das Nações Unidas, Excelências, minhas senhoras e meus senhores. Apraz-me iniciar a nossa intervenção saudando o Japão pela iniciativa de convocar este importante evento que visa debater um assunto que, na atualidade, ocupa um lugar de destaque nas questões relacionadas com a paz, segurança e estabilidade globais. Permita-me que transmita a este Conselho as calorosas saudações de Sua Excelência Filipe Jacinto Nyusi, Presidente da República. Manifestamos o nosso profundo agradecimento à Presidente desta sessão e minha irmã, Sua Excelência Yoko Kamikawa, Ministra de Negócios Estrangeiros do Japão, pelo honroso convite endereçado a Moçambique para participar neste evento ministerial. Endereçamos um singelo reconhecimento à Sua Excelência António Guterres, Secretário-Geral das Nações Unidas, pela visão, liderança e coragem com que tem dirigido a nossa organização, muito em particular no que concerne à agenda de paz e segurança internacionais. Senhora Presidente, para Moçambique, o agendamento deste tema representa uma excelente oportunidade para o Conselho de Segurança fazer uma reflexão profunda sobre os compromissos assumidos pelos Estados-membros da Organização das Nações Unidas em sede do Tratado de Não Proliferação de Armas Nucleares e de outros instrumentos internacionais no domínio da Agenda Global de Desarmamento. Estamos conscientes de que atravessamos uma conjuntura internacional desafiadora devido à ocorrência de situações complexas, com impacto direto na arquitetura da paz, repito, na arquitetura da paz e segurança internacionais. Com efeito, em várias partes do mundo, a instabilidade político-militar, conflitos armados, a pobreza, os efeitos das mudanças climáticas, que continuam a ter um impacto significativo e negativo, desafiam os esforços para a promoção de paz e desenvolvimento. A situação é exacerbada pela fragmentação e recomposição de grupos não estatais com acesso às novas tecnologias de informação e comunicação que as usam para fins terroristas. Assim, Moçambique está particularmente preocupado com a perigosa tendência de construção e difusão de narrativas de outros atos geradores de desconfianças que nos podem conduzir a retrocessos na nossa agenda de desarmamento e não proliferação de armas nucleares. É nosso entendimento que os elementos de uma agenda concreta e prática, através de qual se pode reduzir o risco de conflito nuclear e de corridas armamentistas e fortalecer o Tratado de Proliferação Não Nuclear, inclui o reconhecimento por todos os Estados-membros de que o status quo nuclear gerador de instabilidade, desconfiança, a incerteza e a competição derivam da incoerência entre o discurso e a prática. Falamos uma coisa e fazemos outra coisa. Neste contexto, Moçambique está comprometido com a implementação efetiva do Tratado de Não Proliferação de Armas Nucleares, do Tratado de Proibição de Armas Nucleares e do Tratado